You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for a recap of day one of another thrilling Ashes Test match. We're 4 tests in now. We're at Old Trafford. The Ashes are up for grabs as long as the rain stays away, and Stuart Broad has taken his 600th Test wicket. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe-Brown to talk about all of the action. How you doing, Max?
Hello, I'm good. I was going to try and do like a 600 with my fingers then, and I sort of couldn't work out how to do it, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, another great day of cricket. We just have to hope that we get the full match that we deserve.
Absolutely, yeah. So on this show, we'll be talking about everything that we saw on day one as it swung back and forth again. A couple of times it looked like Australia were going to get away, but ultimately England were able to hold them in check. First question, Max, before we get into the summary and all of that, where do you think the match stands at the moment? Like they were walking off, if you were watching the TV as I was, there's a lot of chat from the England guys and from the England commentary unit that it had been a really good day for England and that they bowled particularly well. That isn't necessarily how I read it, but first question for you, where do you think we stand?
Well, I think you have to sort of separate the position in a world where it's a 5-day test match and you're expecting to get a full game in, and a world where it's possibly going to be a 3.5-day test match. Now, in a 5-day test match, I'd if I'm England, I'm pretty happy with my day's work. Like the pitch looks pretty decent, and to have them 299 for 8, and you've got a good shot at taking those last couple of wickets reasonably cheaply, and then you're looking well set. I think they said the average first innings score at Old Trafford recently was like 380 or so. So by that metric, pretty good for England. But by the metric of where the series is going and where the match may end up, I think they're possibly, they're going to struggle. I think maybe that's where some of the, difference in opinion comes in.
That was sort of my reading too. I think on the face of it, if you just looked at where the game sits now, and you didn't know what was going to happen later with the weather, you'd say a really, really good day by England. As it stands, I think Australia are basically slightly behind where they'd ideally be. But bearing in mind what I reckon their game plan is, we'll be thinking that's not fine. Too bad. Yeah, that's a 6 out of 10. Or maybe a 5 out of 10, but certainly not a 1 out of 10. And, we'll talk about all of that. Before we do, if you're listening on any audio platform, do make sure you hit like and subscribe. Keep the listenership growing. Or if you listen to us for the first time, join the listenership, Same on YouTube. Do hit like, do hit subscribe there. And leave us a comment if you've got an angle. Often we hear comments from people who are very angry about something that we said. Don't hear many keep up the good work, chaps. Comments. And they're really what keep the algorithm churning for us. Max, do you want to summarise the day quickly?
Absolutely. So as we mentioned, a lot of talk around what the weather was going to be like, but and that fed into what would either team do if they won the toss. So there was added intrigue at the start. Aside from what you might normally do at Old Trafford, and England won the toss again. That 4 from 4 for Ben Stokes. So that's at least one side of the Ashes is 4-0. So that's the toss. The toss Ashes and the spirit of cricket Ashes are well and truly sewn up for England. So that's good.
Nice, yeah.
But yeah, England won the toss and they put Australia in. Not often that results in success at Old Trafford, but that is what England did. So they were hoping for some early wickets. Didn't necessarily come about. David Warner was belligerent, and they weren't quite firing. But Stuart Broad finally got his line of length right to get to 599, knocking over Khawaja. But with Labuschagne and Smith at the crease after the first couple of wickets, things started to look like they were getting away from England. But as is the story of the day, all the way through, really, just when it looked like Australia were pulling away and making this a day that England were, really going to perhaps regret, someone chipped in with a wicket. Wood got Smith, then Ali got Labuschagne, and suddenly England were on top, and Mitch Marsh bashed the ball around a bit, and Australia were away again. Then 2 quick wickets, and it was a real nip and tuck day, as it's been throughout the whole Ashes. It was it was just a day that was kind of the whole series in microcosm, in a way. And then even at the end, the late wicket of Alex Carey sort of bringing that back from what you might have said was probably Australia's day to possibly England's day. So a really exciting day. I mean, Chris Woakes pick of the bowlers with his 4 wickets probably, but obviously the man of the moment is Stuart Broad. But I think we'll get to that a little later.
No,
or do you want to do it now?
What? Let's do Stuart Broad now, because it's definitely the headline from the day, isn't it? Go with your big story first. We've talked about where we think the game is at, and maybe in the second part we'll talk about what we might think will happen next. But a man doesn't take 600 wickets very often. What have we got? 5 players ever to take 600 wickets. This is maybe is it in fact maybe only 4 players to take 600 wickets.
It's 5. It's 5.
5. Okay, cool. So momentous occasion from a modern great, Max.
Yeah, and obviously 5th player to reach 600, but only the second seamer behind, of course, his great friend James Anderson, who we were hoping would come back into it today. Wasn't to be, but it's all about Stuart Broad today, obviously. And you say all the usual things, don't you? You can repeat all the lines that came out with James Anderson. Like it's an amazing achievement to do it at any kind of bowler. It's even more amazing achievement to do it as a seam bowler with all the stress and strain that goes through your body and the longevity behind it. That's particularly impressive. But I think with Stuart Broad, there are some other things that make it special. The guy himself, like he divides opinion. Obviously, no one's going to forget the moment where he didn't walk after edging it to first slip. He was public enemy number 1. There was the songs of "Dude Looks Like a Lady" when he was on the on the boundary. You've got the front page newspaper splash of the most wanted man. And he rubs people up the wrong way. He enjoys doing it. He does it with a smile. He's got the celeb appeal. That's Stuart Broad. I mean, and I think Stuart Broad takes himself sort of to more extreme Stuart Broad levels. Like he almost he almost just plays off it and just brings it out even more. Like he's sort of got a bit chastised when he first started doing the celeb appeal, and now again the same with Khawaja's wicket today. He just ran off to first slip and then just quickly turned around to Joel Wilson to put the finger up. The incredulity on his face when things don't go his way, when he doesn't get a review decision from his captain. All of that adds to the spectacle. So you just have to look. And the other side of it is just sort of the individual moments that he brings with the ball. The 8 for 15 Australia obviously is top of the list. I mean, that was a phenomenal display. And he just has this knack of bringing out an outrageous performance and breaking a game open that you don't often see. Even the top bowlers who take all these wickets, he's got something where he just gets on a roll and absolutely runs away with it. Only England bowler to have 2 Test hat-tricks as well. There's lots of extra stuff you can go into, but the headband, I love the headband. Yeah. So it's brilliant. Amazing achievement from him. Full congratulations. The best bit about it though is of course that his fiancée thinks that he's her second favourite cricketer. Even with the 600 wickets, she prefers Chris Woakes. Chris Woakes is her favourite cricketer, with Stuart Broad a close second. And you can see why. Did you mention most wickets against Australia by a player? As well? Yes, of course.
Yeah. I thought that he was talking about after the game. I thought it was funny that he took his 600th wicket from the James Anderson end. I also thought I couldn't find the exact number, but I saw it mentioned yesterday. This is the side with the most Test wickets in ever, isn't it? And
it was like 1,300 or something.
Yeah, to have 2 guys wheeling around with 600 wickets each is pretty incredible. I mean, if you've been watching England Test cricket, particularly at home, I think over the last decade, 15 years, you've been blessed with quite a few spectacles put on by Broad and by Anderson, and I think he'll live long in the memory. Did you mention Bumrah and the over that went for 35, another record?
No, see, that's what I was saying. There's just
Yeah,
so many
like,
things that Stuart Broad has, just
it
like
is.
weird little statistical quirks that
I
just
mean,
make
like
it so much fun.
you'd probably say, obviously, counting stats wise, it's an incredible achievement. You'd probably say he isn't right at the top of the elite
Mm.
seamers of his generation. You'd have Dale Steyn up there. You'd probably have Anderson up there. You'd probably have Cummins ahead of him. Jasprit Bumrah's got a pretty formidable case. He may be in that second tier below, but like as you say, all those memories and the character and sort of the storylines, the narrative force that this man brings to cricket, the grudges he holds, the way he's outspoken about stuff. Every time Broad plays, it's entertaining, and I think it's a real credit to him that he's got to 600, and I'm really happy that it's happened in a big test like this. And
Do you think he'll catch Jimmy?
I don't think he'll catch Jimmy. No, 80 odd wickets and
80 to
counting,
go,
or
yeah.
90 wickets. Yeah, it's a long way away. I don't think that lessens the achievement though, and I'm glad I was along for the ride. Is what I would say about that.
Yeah.
Should we talk about England's bowling more generally? Maybe starting right at the beginning, Max, with the decision. And if you're an Australian, we will get to the Australian bit. We've got notes on that. Don't worry. It's not going to be completely one-eyed. But this test, it's set up as a sort of semi-final for England, effectively, isn't it? With the potential Ashes final at the Oval next week. They bowl first, and I think that's a good decision. But we can talk about that. Actually, maybe we need to talk about that. So, with that in mind, they decide to go. They win the toss again, as he does, and they bowl first. What are you thinking about that decision with the context of the series where it's at?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can say with all the decisions that we've seen leading into this test, clearly everyone's got an eye on the weather. England. I don't think England bowl first if they don't think this test is going to be a shortened game. They're obviously, I think the two sides to it. Obviously, they love chasing, and will feel that if they get an opportunity to go for any score, they'll give it a bash, and they've got the agency there. Obviously, there's a chance that by doing that, Australia then just decides, just make it completely impossible if the rain comes, and they may not even, might not even get a chance to get to that stage. But if they do get the chance, then they have the opportunity there. And then, there was a little bit of cloud around in the morning. There was a little bit of, it wasn't live, with dead grass on the top. So they probably, it's a bit like, when it's looking a little iffy on a Lord's morning, where you're like, we've got an hour here to make inroads. And I think, when you need to win the game, that's probably what they were looking at. Let's try and get a start to break this open a little bit and get ourselves ahead of the game and get a foot in it. And I'm totally fine with it. Like it's a positive way of approaching the game. So it pretty much, it didn't backfire. That much is obvious. But it was quite a risky strategy, because they could have lost the game today, or like they could have been completely out of the game by the end of today. So it was risky.
There's definitely a risk to it. I think if you're playing purely to win, it always makes sense to chase in Test cricket, because you can effectively eliminate the draw as a possibility by batting really fast, or whatever you want to do. If you bat first, the opposition will always have the opportunity to bat for the draw, because they get to go last, and they know what the target is, and they know how many overs they've got to get there. And I think England had to eliminate that as a possibility. Now, with that in mind, I mean, I think the recent stats suggest that if winning the toss, you don't bowl first at Old Trafford. I think it's something like 3 losses, 6 draws for the team that have chosen to bowl first. So it is a venue where you generally bat first. But there's a stat for everything. I think if you look at England's record at Old Trafford, as I've just mentioned, that in their last 16 tests, they've only lost 1 to Australia, 2019, won 13, drawn 2. So they're probably pretty confident, kind of going either way here. It looked early on like Australia were going to make some inroads, and after Broad obviously gets out Khawaja, Warner was going pretty well, and it falls to Wokes again through a lot of the day. I thought to be England's most penetrative bowler, and I think he gets, doesn't he, Warner when Warner was looking good, and then the double wicket later on, the double wicket over later on where he picks up Mitch Marsh, and then also kind of breaks England into the tail straight away by getting out the other batter, Green. You said bowler of the day, and I think I'd concur with that for those reasons. I thought he had an excellent test, or has had an excellent test so far, Max.
And I think you should probably give him an assist as well for the Steve Smith wicket. Bowling
assist,
with
talk
Mark
me through
Wood.
this.
Well, so like while he and Mark Wood were bowling against Steve Smith, it was just after lunch, wasn't it? And there was just sort of they'd basically set him up, and Chris Wokes was part of that with Mark Wood in terms of trying to get him across, which is what ultimately led to that. The ball from Wood that just snuck through and got him LBW. So I think maybe not a full assist, but like it should be noted. His contribution to that wicket should be noted.
Yeah. No, he did bowl well. And I thought England actually bowled really well to Smith in general. I mean, like you've noted there the way they pulled him across the crease before they pinned him in front, and I think it was one of the better executed plans I've seen against Smith. And if you're an England player or just a follower of cricket, you'll have seen a lot of teams with a lot of plans to see Steve Smith. This is one that England think they can have some success with. But I think you have to be really spot on to
and you also need someone to bowl 93 miles an hour.
Yeah, and that helps. I mean, the India bowled really straight at him in that Border Gavaskar series in Australia, didn't they? And that kind of worked. And New Zealand tried loads of bouncers with Neil Wagner, and that kind of worked as well. But all of these plans have got sort of asterisks against them as well, because sometimes Steve Smith is a genius. Getting him out just after lunch, I think that was an absolutely pivotal moment in the day. Another pivotal moment, Max, and there was a lot of selection talk about this leading into this test. Bairstow behind the stumps, flawless, more or less flawless today, you'd say, and he takes an absolute specky, doesn't he? Like it's a really, really top quality catch.
It's one of the hardest ones to take down low, going the wrong way, changing direction. It's almost like working off instinct. He got back into the swing of it, and hopefully that leads to a bit more confidence for him. He kept well today, and this is sort of what we know. This is what we were saying. Like, Bairstow as a keeper is fine. The issue has been that he's not been keeping at the Bairstow level. Hopefully, this is like the rust is blown off now, maybe, and he's sort of back into it. I think with all the pressure he was under, you have to give him a lot of credit. And also, especially after sort of the start of the day, like there was one where he flicked the pad on the way through, and at first I thought he dropped an absolute clanger once again. And there were a couple of byes that were fired down the leg side that you're not going to blame him for, but it goes against his name, and then he builds a bit of pressure. So on top of that, as well, I think we should give him a lot of credit for his work behind the stumps today, and it just goes to show, doesn't it, what a difference it makes when you take your catches.
It basically does. So in summary, Max, I think what we're saying is that England bowled well. There's some ball tracking stuff on this. I think almost 50% of their deliveries were on a line and length. They went with a tactic that wasn't super baseball from a bowling perspective. They didn't really try anything funky. They were just like, look, we're going to back our ability to bowl in some kind of helpful conditions, I think you'd probably say. Yeah. And we're going to trust ourselves to get through this lineup. And they more or less have. However, the flip side to that is that we're sort of expecting this to be a 3.5 day test. So if you're Australia right now, you may be thinking you're okay. We will take a break, and then we'll talk about Australia, the Australia angle afterwards. Before we do, we will mention one of our sponsors, Manscaped. Use the code CricketPod for 20% off plus free shipping when you head over to manscaped.com. It's smooth sack summer, so you need to get yourself the Lawnmower 4.0, the Performance Package, a nice pair of boxers and some ball deodorant. That'll be my shopping list for you, and you can pick up 20% off with that. Courtesy of us. CricketPod is the code you need to know. And did I mention free shipping? I think I did. You get that too. We're going to take a quick break, and then we shall come back and talk about more cricket.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast, part 2, the second and final part of our recap of day 1 of the 4th Ashes Test. We're going to be doing these recaps after every day's play, apart from Saturday, which we take off, we rest.
It's going to rain all day anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, it's actually worked out quite well for this test, hasn't it? So thank you, God, I suppose, for raining off a day of the must-win test match for England. Matt, can we talk about Australia? Because from their point of view, there's two ways I think you can take the day. 290-ish for 8, batting on what I think most people think is a pretty flat surface without a lot of lateral movement, a nice pace to it, so you get decent value for your runs. Against an England attack that can be a little bit samey and includes Moeen Ali, but who bowled quite a few overs on day 1. That, on the face of it, I think you would say is not good. But then with respect to the fact that it's probably a 3.5 day test and you're playing 8 batters, maybe it actually sets you up quite well for getting the draw, which means you retain the Ashes. What do you think? Talk to me about Australia and their tactics.
So I found it quite interesting because let's dial back to the start, which is obviously the selection issue or the selection discussion, which was that they brought in Cameron Green and dropped Todd Murphy and obviously Hazelwood for Boland, but that's less important for this point. We're looking at that and we're thinking that's quite a defensive move, playing for the draw, parking the bus, as you described it in the Discord.
It is parking the bus
yesterday. Yeah,
it's a Mourinho
move.
It's a Mourinho. Yeah. It's 3 defensive midfielders.
Yeah, which and what I found really interesting was comparing that with like the approach at maybe the first 2/3 of the day, perhaps. They came out pretty aggressive. They were scoring at over 4 and over for a lot of the day until it was Carey and Stark, and sort of they battened down the hatches a little bit. So it was quite interesting that they, fairly clearly selected a team with a view to extending the batting, and then gone sort of at a reasonably fair lick at the start. Perhaps that was just about the extra insurance of knowing that you have, a bit more in the locker. Which is that's one possibility, but I think it's quite high risk, isn't it? If it is going to be a shortened game of Test cricket, I think it's quite clever, especially against England, because you can say it is pretty negative, but you need a draw to win the Ashes, or retain the Ashes. That's important, but you also know that whatever England are going to do, they're going to try and force a win. So, do you actually need to take 20 wickets to win this Test match as Australia in this situation? If it goes 5 days, yes, probably. If it goes 3.5 days, no, you don't. You just let England dangle you a carrot that you're probably going to chase down, and with a batting order that goes to Pat Cummins at 10, you'll probably chase it down. For sort of maybe double bluffing or second guessing what England are trying to do. So I quite like that, the psychology of it, but. On the face of it, like playing that extra batter, it's a bit negative. So again, it comes back to that dichotomy. Like, if there is the weather for 5 days, this isn't a good position for them to be in. It's not gone that well. Loads of people got a start. No one went on to get a big score on a pitch, as you say, that looks pretty decent. There was a bit in it for the bowlers. If you bowled well, you got rewards. I think it was a really good cricket wicket, basically. And again, if it goes 5 days, it's a cracking wicket for a game and Test cricket, but as it stands, I think they're fine. Like, Stark and Cummins could easily put on another 50 tomorrow morning if the sun's out. They're both very decent bats. Stark looks like a new man with his new bat that he's borrowing from Melissa, so that's clearly helped him out. It's quite funny. It looks quite small in his hands, but
Yeah, Stark is a guy with what is it? 10?
850s,
50s?
Yeah,
I think it was 10. Like, he's a
maybe
decent
10,
bat.
enough.
It is. it is kind of mad that Pat Cummins is batting 10. Like he'd be a solid number 8 for most
England.
teams in the world. I think it was. I think it is quite negative. I will say that. I don't. I think it really limits the number of ways they can win the cricket match. By not picking the spinner. What you're effectively doing is you're saying we can either win this purely with scoreboard pressure because we bat all the way down, and maybe that's what they were doing earlier on, as you sort of alluded to. They were thinking, well, we'll try and score at 4 and a bit and over because we can bat forever. And
and then it makes England, it's harder for England to catch up at that point as well.
Exactly. And sheer scoreboard pressure and knowing the way England play means that maybe you can afford to only have sort of 3 frontline bowlers. The other way you can win it is by really overusing Stark and Cummins, which is kind of what they've been doing in the series so far. They can make a fair assumption that England will bat once, or not will bat once. We'll try and bat fast and probably not for more than 80 overs. And with that in mind, you could probably get 50 of your overs in. With if you really flogged them in an innings, you could probably get 50 overs out of, maybe that's an exaggeration, 45 overs out of Stark and Cummins, plus 15 out of Hazelwood, say.
Well, Woke's bowled 19 today, so easily.
Well, yeah. And then, well, okay, so let's say it's 40 plus 15 from Hazelwood, and you've got 55. That's not that many overs that have to be bowled by your fourth bowler. In this case, kind of 2 fifth bowlers, and maybe they'll do as well as Murphy in a first innings anyway. What it definitely takes away from though is I think their possibility to win the match on a pitch that is turning in the 4th innings.
Yeah.
Now they've made, I think, probably a fair assumption that it's going to rain so much that the pitch isn't going to deteriorate that much, and they might have made an assumption as well that England will just try and take Murphy down, and they'd rather have seamers, and they basically don't trust Murphy to bowl. But I do overall think that playing 2 batting all-rounders as your 4th and 5th bowlers is extremely negative. It is parking the bus, basically. It is massively increasing your chance of getting a draw at the expense of your chance of getting a win, and a little bit at the expense of England's chance of getting a win. But that is all they need to retain the Ashes. So in a sense, it is decent tactics. And then I don't know about the way they played. I think they did bat to try and bat England out the game early, but then they scored 40. I think it was 44 runs off the last 22 overs of the day, which is the complete. They're basically batting for the draw on day one. I thought
on the easiest point to bat.
Yeah, I did think that was sort of a slightly strange way of going about it.
Yeah.
What? I mean, I don't know what you thought, but I thought it would look pretty easy out there. Anderson was bowling relatively innocuously, and they were sort of dead batting Moeen Ali.
Yeah, I mean, there was a bit of turn, so there was sign for Moeen Ali, and if it does go to the weekend, and we get more cricket than we expect, that is going to be a massive issue, I think, for Australia. But I thought it was. Yeah, I agree. It was really strange that they kind of shut up shop. Maybe they just thought we'll just see the rest of the day out, and with the number of overs left in the day compared to how much time's left in the day, they only had to face 3 overs of the new ball. So maybe they just thought, well, we'll see it out, and we'll come back tomorrow at 280 for 7, 280 for 6, and we'll be.
Oh well, no, I think that is effectively. I think that is effectively why they did that. But that is with a view to making sure you don't lose the test match. That isn't with a view to making sure you win the test match.
100%.
If you're an Australian, obviously that's what you're thinking. We can take 20 overs out of the game here relatively risk-free because the ball is old and it's not doing anything. Now, that isn't the attitude of a team that wants to post 350 and get on with the game. Because if you only score 40 runs off the 20 overs before the new ball, you still have to deal with the new ball. You're probably going to get out to it, and that is exactly what happens. It happens. This is a thing you see in the whole history of Test cricket. The new ball comes and wickets start to fall again. So that's why I think batting first. From a winning perspective, it is a strange tactic, but it does make sense So it's a weird argument that we're having with ourselves here. It does make
yeah.
it does make
It makes
total
sense if you want to draw the game.
A man who didn't want to draw the game, it's the Bison. That man, Mitch Marsh again, Max.
Yeah,
There's a lot of alliteration.
He was brilliant.
Really threw me off.
I love that.
Right?
I love that innings. Travis Head as well, actually, until he obviously top edged a fairly innocuous short ball from Stuart Broad. The pair of them, they put that impetus back in. That was the thing that we were talking about. When they were going at 4 and over, they were, it was looking really dicey for England at that point. Like Mitch Marsh was middling absolutely everything. The only thing I remember him not middling was one where Stuart Broad got it to nip off the seam, absolutely miles, and then they showed the ball tracking, and where the ball would have gone was directly into the middle of Mitch Marsh's bat as he played it, which I found quite amusing. But yeah, I mean, they came out and basically just after England had taken those couple of quick wickets, just put the pressure straight back on them. In that positive way that they've done all series, and I was really impressed with the way they played. And what do you make? What are you saying on Travis Head's dismissal? Because we didn't mind England playing the short ball at Lords. So are we going to say that Travis Head was a fool to attack that Stuart Broad ball, or are we saying absolutely fine to go after an 80-mile-an-hour bouncer on a fairly good bouncy pitch?
I don't really have a problem with it. I do think there's an element with some of these wickets that is a little bit confusing. So we've acknowledged that at the end of the day, they effectively are taking time out of the match.
Yeah.
If that's the plan later, then in a sense, why are you doing that earlier? If you are playing to not be risk averse and to not lose wickets, at that stage, it sort of holds that you would also not hit the ball right at the man who's there for the trap earlier on. But it might be one of those things, and it's one of those things where actually. It's one of the rare occasions where an ex-pro talking about this sort of thing probably is more relevant than informed non-players, because we don't know what his impulse is when he sees the short ball. It might almost be that his instincts are such that he just can't help himself, and that
when he got to the crease,
it just doesn't work.
When he got to the crease, he was being absolutely battered by the short ball. Like Mark Wood was just bowling at his face and he didn't know where to go. So I mean, it's entirely possible that he went in for lunch and was like, right, well, look, this isn't working, so I'm going to go for it. And that would make sense, and I would I'd back him for doing that, especially against Stuart Broad. But
made a good contribution as well. I've been really impressed with Head all series. I think I've enjoyed watching him bat. I think he's played with real style, and he's definitely not really good hanging about. Like he's definitely somebody that wants to win, and I think that's good. I like people who want to win. Max, what's going to happen next? I think that's the final question from this episode of the podcast. It is set up pretty nicely. Should be a good day. Let's just for the sake of assumption say Australia get 330. Probably about par from this position. What should England do vis-a-vis the rest of the test and what we know about the weather?
Try and score 450 in 80 overs. That'll be that's the goal.
Do you think
it's not going to be easy?
What they'll try and do? Do you reckon that's actually what they'll try and do? Yeah,
I obviously with one eye on the forecast. It might change tomorrow, so obviously they'll be looking at that. But it hasn't changed for the last 2 days, and it does look like there's quite a lot of rain on the way coming to the northwest of England. So if they need to win this game, they want to win this game. The only way they can do that is by getting a first innings lead and getting it by lunch on day 3, maybe. How long are those 30 runs going to take? Say it takes 10 overs, including the changeover. You've got, it's not going to be the whole of the rest of the. Well, it might be. It might be the whole of the rest of the day. So maybe not in 80 overs. Maybe 450 in 90 overs or 100 overs. Be more realistic. But that's the kind of thing they've got to be looking at. They're going to want a lead of probably at least 100. And then it's over to you, Australia. Like, how do you want to play this game? Do you want to just dead bat it for a draw and hope it does rain? Because that's pretty risky. Do you want to try and make a game of it? It's going to be interesting. There's a real bit of cat and mouse there, but obviously it's going to depend on how England's innings goes. But whatever happens, I think we could be in for something quite interesting from England. There's an equal chance, of course, that it all falls flat on its face and they end up skittled for 200 because that's what they have to do.
I tend to agree with that. I think England will almost see tomorrow. And this is a scenario where if they might bowl Australia out in the first 2 balls of the day, which does change things significantly, or Australia might bat till lunch, which with the capability of Cummins and Stark isn't a non-zero possibility. That is something which could happen.
Yeah.
Those are scenarios. If we eliminate them and play the 3:30 scenario, I agree with you. I think England will have 70 overs to bat tomorrow, and they will need to score, or they will try and score the same number of runs as Australia has scored in the test so far. I think they'll try and score at 5 and over, which would get them to about parity by the end of the day. It's also a weird one where the over rate of Australia, which we know is going to be really slow because they've got 5 seam bowlers, all take forever to bowl.
And Khawaja's, very cleverly prepared the ground for that by going and whinging to the ICC.
It is one where it actually, because of the shortened nature of the test, could have a material impact on the likelihood of there being a result. If Australia bowled as slowly as they did in the 4th innings at Headingley,
and there's no spin,
11 overs an hour, then that is a problem for England. Like, it's a big problem for England. If
it's also just not acceptable. I mean, maybe we do a quick minute on that sort of overrates thing with Khawaja and the ICC, because I have absolutely no sympathy at all. Like, just bowl your overs. Like, that's the whole point of the fines. Like, people are paying to go and see this cricket, and they're getting shortchanged by teams pissing around. I don't think there should be.
I tend to agree with that. I tend to agree with that, and I think it's not really from the entertainment point of view, but I do think you can massively warp the parameters of the game by effectively, if you bowl 10 overs an hour, that's 5 overs by each bowler. They're barely doing any work. Like, they can bowl long spells of bowling like that, and you're not fatiguing at the same rate. You eliminate the need to bowl spinners, which kicks them further out of the game. I think it just makes a result, the natural result of the match,
more likely to be a draw.
More likely to be a draw, which is not.
No one wants that. No.
But I don't. I mean, like, at the same time, I don't think that it's a factor that if you're an England player, you should be thinking about too much. You should be because it's out of your control.
Control the controllables, as they say.
You've got to just hope the umpires do their job there.
Yeah.
I think it would be a really interesting day. I mean, I think basically what England's tactic will be, whatever Australia have got, let's try and get to that by the end of the day.
Yeah.
And if we're 50 runs short, 100 runs short, it doesn't matter, because we need to get bowling again on day 3 so we can get Australia out, so that we've got a chance to have a chase. Now, if it goes amazingly well, fantastic. But I think it's a shot to nothing. If you're playing,
you think we could see England declaring with a first innings deficit?
I don't think they'll be that extreme. I think they'll basically go nuts, and I think it'll be the other way. I think it's the incentive to take risks is so high if you go full Bazball and you really don't believe in the value of the draw, and in this scenario, I think there are other reasons why the draw is sort of worthless, like the series would be dead, or the Ashes would be lost rather. You wouldn't be able to recover the Ashes, or whatever, win the Ashes.
Yeah.
So I think any team in this scenario, in what might be a 3.5 day test, has to go nuts and try and get as close to parity as they can, and accept that they might fall 100 runs short. But that's sort of okay, because what the end goal here is setting up some kind of 4th innings chase.
Yeah.
Even if the 4th innings chase ends up being you've got to get 370 in 45 overs.
At least you have a chance.
Like, at least you have a chance.
Yeah.
That's what the end goal has to be, is to get themselves into a position where they have a chance of doing something like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully it goes much better from an England point of view. Hopefully you get to parity, or you get a small lead, and then Australia have got one of those nightmare 3rd innings where they have to bat kind of quickly, but also defensively, and you see what happens at Headingley. It's interesting. Max, we've done our 40 minutes. Anything last from you?
No. Not really. Just really looking forward to tomorrow, and obviously we need a quick word to our other sponsor, Serious Cricket. 10% off with the code TCP23. Head over there for a bunch of excellent gear, and get in touch with us at the Cricket Pod, or support us on Patreon. All the links below as well for the coffee, etc., etc. But it's going to be great. Going to be great stuff for tomorrow. Yeah, keep watching and come and join us.
Right. See you later, Max, and see you later, everyone. Bye bye.